morning to my dear students. Today I will read and explain the poem Keeping Quiet, composed by Pablo Neruda from the book Flamingo. Pablo Neruda was a famous Chilean poet and politician. He was a communist and was forced to leave Chile temporarily due to his political ideology. He gained a lot of fame due to his love poems and also his political writing. Pablo Neruda has been called the greatest poet of the 20th century in any language. His 10 most famous poems include Sonnet 17, I do not love you except because I love you, Your Laughter, Tonight I can write the saddest lines, and Ode to My Socks. Now let's go to the main idea or theme of the poem. The poem talks about the necessity of quiet introspection. It will help people to understand themselves and will create the feelings of mutual love and relationship. By quiet introspection, the poet doesn't mean total inactivity. Instead, he wants full involvement with life. The reason for the discard and war is the imbalance between man and nature. Quiet introspection will establish a spiritual and physical union that is most desirable for the survival of the earth and of human beings. Let's move on to the stanza-wise explanation of the poem. Now we will count to 12 and we will all keep still. For once on the face of the earth, let's not speak in any language. Let's stop for 1 second and not move our arms so much. The poet requests everyone to count till 12 in their own mind and stop for a while. Maybe this 12 referred by the poet is the 12 hours in the clock or 12 hours of a day which rules our life. The word 12 refers to 12 months of a year. The term 12 used by the poet gives various meanings. 12 may be aimed for a preparation for all to be ready to plunge into the state of silence. He wants everyone to stop and calm down. The poet urges everyone not to speak any language. As we all know that there are different languages spoken in different parts of the earth which sometimes become a barrier. So he asks people not to speak. Not only this, he also wants us to stop moving our arms. By using the word arms, he means the weapons which are used by different countries to raise a war against each other. So basically, the poet demanding peace from all of us. We can also say that the poet advocates the importance of silence and self-introspection. It can transform not only the life of an individual but also the face of the earth. The poet says that it doesn't need much time to look within and examine oneself. It will take only as long as it will take to count 12. During this time of introspection, that is self-introspection, one should keep quiet and say nothing at all. It will give him a strange feeling of gatheredness with all others. So, self-introspection or self-observation is very important, as it is a kind of a regular check on self-development which helps us to know what we have achieved so far and also helps us examining our own ideas, thoughts and feelings. Let me move on to stanza 2 and 3. It would be an exotic moment without rush, without engines. We would all be together in a sudden strangeness. Fishermen in the cold sea would not harm whales, and the man gathering salt would look at his hurt hands. In this stanza, the poet says that it would be an exotic or a rare situation when there will be no engines working. Here, he wants to say that if everything comes to a standstill, it will be a different moment. If all the engines like the vehicles and machines stop, then there will be a sudden strange situation as the world will experience a sudden calmness. Although it may seem a little strange in the beginning, it will be eventually bring us all together. This silence will be free from the disturbing sound of engines and people rushing to get their work done for some time. So, the poet feels contented imagining the change that will be brought about in those moments where people will not be in a rush to achieve material things one after another. Further, the poet says that the fishermen will also stop and not harm whales in the sea. This means that the poet is urging everyone not to harm animals. Here, he gives the examples of whales which are being hunted for the purpose of trade or food. Fishermen symbolizes man's discriminate exploitation of nature for his vested interest. He also wants people to calm down so that they can stop and see what they have achieved or lost. For this, the poet gives example of the man who gathers salt whose hands are hurt. So, the men who hurt their hands while collecting salt will get a little rest. In other words, the poet wants everyone to stop for a while in order to see and feel how much they have lost for the sake of attaining such materialistic things. In the fourth stanza, the poet says, those who prepare green wars with gas, wars with fire, victory with no survivors, would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shade, doing nothing. In this stanza, those refers to the politician and the scientist who are involved in initiating and aggravating wars and the chemical wars which man is waging against man and against nature. Man's activities of polluting the nature and the chemical and nuclear weapons created by him have brought mankind to its dead end. But the poet says that if everything comes to a standstill, it will be a very different moment. The people who seek fresh wars using gas and weapons will put on clean clothes and get a chance to walk with their brothers. It will create a feeling of mutual understanding. They will lead a hatred-free and calm life, giving a halt to their destructive activities. Therefore, the poet wants us to adopt a new approach towards life and mankind. He says that we should treat our enemies like brothers and promote peace and harmony in the world. In other words, the poet is promoting universal brotherhood and peace. Now, I move on to the next stanza. What I want should not be confused with total inactivity. Life is what is about. I want no truck with the death. Here, the poet clarifies his idea and further says that he does not want people should sit idle. In fact, what he says is connected with the life, not with the death. Life is what it is about means that activity is very essence of life. Inactivity is death. But for a fresh, better and useful activity, a little stillness is essential. The poet wishes that there should be no war because he does not want to see trucks laden with the dead bodies of the people or soldiers. Thus we can say the poet clarifies that his wish should not be considered as the case for total inactivity. He only wants to interrupt the sad, cruel and threatening activities of the world for a moment and make the people introspect their actions, that is, to ponder upon their acts and realize the results of the deeds. If we are not so single minded about keeping our lives moving, and for once could perhaps a huge silence might interrupt the sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with the death. The poet says that we are single minded about keeping our lives moving. It means that we are forced towards achieving materialistic goals without even thinking about their results. We generally work endlessly with the aim of completing all our tasks. Here, from huge silence, the poet means that we should stop and see the consequences of our deeds. In the code of accumulating more and more wealth due to the fear of death, we generally don't enjoy our accomplishments. So, the poet urges us to stop for a while and take some moment to relish on what we have achieved till date. The expression of huge silence might interrupt the sadness means that if we will stop and see what has been achieved by us so far, it will help us keep the sadness which has become so prominent in our lives. That is, the sadness of not enjoying what we have achieved. So, in our fear of death and in a great achieved most of the things before our death, we never value what we have. Now, I will move on to the last stanza. Perhaps the earth can teach us, as when everything seems dead and later proves to be alive. Now I will count up to 12 and you keep quiet and I will go. The poet uses the image of the earth to show how life exists in seemingly dormant things. The poet suggests to the human beings that we should learn a lesson from the earth. In winter, the earth becomes so still and silent that it seems to be dead. But later in spring, it seems to be lively again. It has new beauties and colors added to it. Everything present in the nature, such as the trees, the birds, rivers, etc., get life. Similarly, after a little quietness and silence, man can resume his activities in a fresh and better manner. Just like all the creations of nature undergo rebirth with the change of seasons. Keeping quiet will be a rebirth for the human soul. It will give a new meaning to our life. So, by giving an example of nature, the poet wants to say that all the human beings should stop and try to judge their deeds. Finally, he ends up by saying that now he will count up to 12 so that we all may become quiet. Here, quiet means to calm down ourselves and move towards a path of peace and harmony. After saying all these things, the poet says, I will go, which means as he has conveyed his message to the people and wants them to be left alone to think about it and walk in the direction of peace. I hope you all have enjoyed this video and understood the poem very thoroughly. Thank you, students.